The morning sun shone brightly over the small town as Mara stepped out of her apartment. In one hand, she held her worn leather purse, and inside it, carefully tucked away, was a check. It wasn't a large amount, but it meant a lot to her. It was payment for the extra hours she had spent working for the local community program. Over the past month, that program wasn't just a job to her, it was a place where she helped organize small events for children, taught them simple art skills, and sometimes even read them stories when their parents were busy. The check was a symbol of her effort and her pride. As she walked down the street, the air carried the smell of fresh bread from the bakery at the corner. She smiled to herself, already thinking about how she could surprise her son, Noel, with his favorite soft bread rolls later. That thought made her footsteps lighter. Noel was only 8 years old, but he was the brightest part of her life. Every little thing she earned, every task she completed, every hour she worked, it was all for him. The bank was only a few blocks away. It was a tall building with large glass windows that reflected the blue sky. Mara had visited it a few times before, mostly to deposit small payments from the program. Each time, she tried to dress neatly, hoping to be treated with the same respect as anyone else. Today, she wore her light blue blouse and a simple skirt. Her hair was tied back, and though she had no jewelry on, she carried herself with quiet dignity. When she reached the front door of the bank, she paused for a moment, straightened her shoulders, and stepped inside. The air inside was cool, and the faint scent of polished wood mixed with the soft hum of the air conditioning. A few customers stood in line, some glancing at their phones, others chatting quietly. Mara took her place at the end of the line and waited patiently. She wasn't in a hurry. As she waited, she glanced at the posters on the wall, images of smiling families, students holding books, and messages about trust and community. The words made her feel a bit more comfortable. After all, this bank often worked with the local program, and she believed they would handle her check without trouble. She thought about the small list of things she needed to buy: milk, rice, fresh vegetables, and maybe a small box of crayons for Noel. The crayons were not on the necessary list, but she remembered how he had been trying to draw a picture of their old family home, using only a pencil. He had looked up at her and said, "Mama, I wish I had colors." That memory made her even more determined to cash the check today. The line moved slowly, but eventually, Mara reached the front. She stepped forward and offered a polite smile to the teller, a young man with neatly combed hair and a crisp shirt. His name tag read Colin. "Good morning," Mara greeted softly, placing the check on the counter. Colin glanced at it briefly, then looked back at her. His expression didn't change much, but his tone was casual, almost careless. "Where's this from?" he asked. "It's from the local community program," Mara explained. "They work with your bank. I helped organize the summer fair last month." Colin turned the check over, scanned it with his eyes, and let out a short chuckle. Mara's smile faded slightly. She couldn't understand what was funny about it, you know? Colin said, leaning slightly on the counter, "We don't usually take these." Mara's brows drew together in confusion. "I've cashed them here before," she replied politely. "The program uses this bank. I'm sure it will go through." Colin tilted his head, as if thinking about it, then looked back at the check. Instead of typing anything into his computer or asking for more details, he shook his head. "Nah," he said simply. Then, without another word, he took the check in both hands and tore it down the middle. The sound of paper ripping filled Mara's ears. For a second, she thought she had imagined it. She stared at the torn pieces in shock, her mouth opening slightly, but no words coming out. Around her, the line of customers shifted, and someone coughed. The moment felt frozen for Mara. That small piece of paper had meant groceries, crayons, and warm bread for Noel. And now, it was gone. Just like that. Colin dropped the torn pieces into the small trash bin beside his counter. "Sorry," he said lightly, though his tone carried no real apology. "You'll have to get a new one." Mara swallowed hard. She wanted to ask why he hadn't even checked the system, why he hadn't even tried, but the words felt heavy in her throat. She simply nodded once, her hands tightening on the edge of her purse. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the bank. The cool air inside was replaced by the warm sunlight outside, but it felt heavier now. She walked slowly down the steps, her mind still replaying the sound of the paper tearing. On the street, life moved on as usual. People passed by, cars rolled through the intersection, and children laughed somewhere in the distance. But for Mara, the morning had shifted from hope to disappointment in a matter of minutes. She thought of Noel, waiting at the neighbor's house for her to return. She didn't want him to see her upset. She decided she would tell him the check needed to be reissued and that it might take a few days. He didn't need to know the way the teller had treated her. At least, not now. As she walked away from the bank, she glanced back at its tall glass windows. Something in the corner of her eye caught her attention, a large poster displayed just inside the window. She couldn't see it clearly from this distance, but it looked familiar somehow. She shook her head lightly and kept walking, not knowing that the image on that poster would change everything in the days to come. Mara walked slowly down the street, her steps heavy and uneven. The weight of the torn check in her mind pressed on her chest as if the small pieces of paper had somehow become bricks. She wanted to shake off the anger, to tell herself that it was just a mistake, but she couldn't. The laughter of the teller, the casual way he had ripped her check without checking anything, it replayed in her mind. Like a broken record. She passed the small coffee shop on the corner and glanced through the window. People inside were laughing over mugs of steaming coffee and plates of pastries. Their joy made her feel even more alone in that moment. She thought about Noel, and a pang of worry rose in her chest. She had promised him a small treat after school, a simple reward for being patient and helping her with chores. Now, with the check gone, even that simple happiness seemed out of reach. Mara slowed her pace as she reached the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Cars passed in a steady stream, their tires hissing against the hot asphalt. She noticed how everyone seemed to be in a rush, moving toward their own goals, their own lives. Mara's life had its own rhythm, shaped by her work at the community program and by caring for Noel. But this moment made her feel as if her efforts were invisible, unappreciated. When the light finally turned green, Mara crossed carefully, keeping her eyes ahead. She thought about what she would do next. Returning home without cash would mean no groceries, and she couldn't let Noel go without something to eat. She had to find a way to fix this. To get another check issued quickly, she made a mental note to call the program director first thing in the morning. They were always understanding and could help her resolve issues like this. But the frustration of being dismissed so casually stayed with her like a shadow. Mara reached the small park near the center of town and paused for a moment. Children ran across the grass, playing tag and laughing loudly. Their carefree joy reminded her of Noel's wide smile and endless energy. She closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. She told herself to stay calm, to not let anger or embarrassment cloud her thinking. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the teller. What had made him laugh? Why had he treated her with such disregard? She had followed the rules, had done everything correctly, and yet he had acted as if her effort didn't matter at all. Mara felt a flush of helplessness, but she also felt something else: determination. She wouldn't let this incident defeat her or her son. She would find a solution. Her thoughts returned to Noel. She pictured him sitting at the small wooden table in their kitchen, working on a drawing with his pencils. His small hands moved carefully, creating shapes and colors with precision. Mara could see the hope in his eyes, the trust that she would always provide what he needed. That trust gave her strength. She refused to let anyone, not even a careless bank teller, take that away. After a few moments, Mara started walking again, her pace more steady this time. She decided to stop by a local grocery store to see if she could at least buy a few essentials. With what little she had left from previous paychecks, she reminded herself that even small victories counted. Inside the store, the familiar smells of fresh bread, fruits, and vegetables greeted her. She picked up a loaf of bread and some fresh tomatoes, moving slowly down the aisles, each item she added to her basket reminded her of her responsibilities, but also of the small joys she could still give Noel, even if the check had been torn. She could still provide for him, even if it meant making sacrifices herself. After paying for the groceries, Mara stepped outside again. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, and the heat was stronger now. Sweat beaded on her forehead. But she ignored it, focusing on the steps she would take next. She decided to call the program director, Mr. Harris, as soon as she reached home. He had always been fair and helpful, and she knew he would know exactly how to resolve this issue. Mara walked down the quiet street toward the small house she rented at the edge of town. The neighborhood was calm, with neighbors tending there. Gardens were chatting quietly over fences. She waved to a few familiar faces, smiling faintly, even though her mind was preoccupied. As she reached her front door, Mara paused. She looked back toward the bank. The tall glass windows shining in the sunlight, something about the building, seemed different now, almost mocking in its height and reflection. She shook her head, trying to push away the anger that bubbled inside her. She told herself that she would handle this with patience and care. Inside her home, Noel was waiting, as usual, with a drawing in progress. The small table near the window was covered with colored pencils and sheets of paper. He looked up as she entered, his eyes lighting up with a smile. "Mama, you're back," he said. "Look, I drew a picture of the park today." Mara's heart softened immediately. She knelt beside him, taking the paper in her hands. The drawing was bright and full of energy, filled with trees, children, and a small sun shining above. "It's beautiful, Noel," she said genuinely. "You worked very hard on this," he beamed. "I wanted to show you before I colored the sky," he said proudly. Mara nodded, keeping her own worry hidden behind her smile. She didn't want Noel to see the frustration or disappointment from the morning. She needed to be strong for him. After a few minutes, she set the drawing aside and prepared a small snack for Noel. She made sure to include the bread she had bought earlier, slicing it carefully and placing a few pieces on a small plate. Noel ate happily, chatting about his day and telling her about the games he had played with his friends. Mara listened patiently, nodding and asking questions. She made a mental note to contact the program director first thing in the morning. She also decided she would make a plan to return to the bank to address what had happened. She refused to let the incident go unresolved, but she also knew she had to remain calm and composed. As the afternoon sun began to fade, Mara cleaned up the small kitchen, putting away dishes and preparing for the evening. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. She was tired from the day's events, but she also felt a quiet strength growing inside her. She would face this challenge, just as she faced all others, with patience, courage, and a clear mind. Before going to bed that evening, Mara glanced out of her small window. The street was calm, and the sky was painted with shades of pink and orange. She thought about the next day, about how she would handle the situation at the bank, and about the small victories she could still achieve for Noel. She whispered softly to herself, promising that she would not be discouraged and that she would continue to provide the best she could for her son. The next morning, Mara woke with a sense of quiet determination. The events of the previous day were still heavy in her mind, but she refused to let them control her. She carefully prepared breakfast for Noel, who was already bright and cheerful, humming a small tune as he ate his toast and milk. His innocence and joy gave her a renewed sense of purpose. She reminded herself that she had to remain calm and focused when she returned to the bank. After breakfast, Mara gathered her things. She placed her spare change and her check inside her worn leather purse, along with a small notebook where she kept all her important information from the community program. Every step she took that morning felt purposeful. She knew exactly what she needed to do. She would go to the bank, explain the situation politely, and ensure that the check was properly processed this time. When she arrived at the bank, the line was already forming. She waited patiently, glancing at the familiar posters on the walls. They showed smiling families and children engaged in various activities. One in particular caught her attention, though she did not recognize it immediately. A young boy, wearing a bright yellow shirt, grinned widely in the photograph. His eyes sparkled. Full of energy and hope, Mara felt a strange familiarity. But she did not have time to think much about it. She had more pressing matters. Her turn came quickly, and she stepped forward. Colin was at the counter again, his expression unreadable. Mara took a deep breath and smiled politely. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady. She placed the check in front of him carefully, making sure it was flat and visible. Colin glanced at it and frowned slightly. Mara explained once more. "This check is from the local community program. I work with them organizing events, and they use your bank. This is payment for my work last month." Colin muttered something under his breath, a small sound that made Mara's hands tighten slightly around the counter. She focused on staying calm. She would not allow frustration to show. She had to be patient. Before Colin could respond, a woman's voice called from the side, "Colin, may I have a word with you?" Mara turned slightly and saw a woman approaching from the office. She wore a navy suit and had an air of authority. A name tag read Ms. Grant, branch manager. Mara felt a small flicker of hope. Perhaps this woman would understand the situation and help her resolve it quickly. Colin stepped aside, and Ms. Grant looked at Mara, her expression warm and attentive. "Good morning," she said. "How can I help you today?" Mara explained the situation calmly and clearly, recounting what had happened the previous day. She described how her check had been torn and how she had been dismissed without explanation. Ms. Grant listened carefully, nodding as Mara spoke. "I understand," Ms. Grant said once Mara finished. "That should not have happened. I apologize for the way you were treated. Let's make sure this is corrected immediately." Mara felt a small wave of relief. She watched as Ms. Grant motioned to Colin to bring up the check on the computer. Colin's expression was tense now, his earlier confidence replaced by unease. Mara could see that he realized the seriousness of the mistake. Ms. Grant turned to Mara. "Do you have the check with you?" she asked. Mara handed it to her. Ms. Grant examined it carefully, then typed into the computer to verify the information. Everything was correct. The check was valid, and the account from the community program was in good standing. "See?" Ms. Grant said gently to Colin. "There is no problem. This check should have been processed without any issue." Colin nodded, his face slightly red. Mara noticed that he avoided looking directly at her. For a moment, she wondered if he felt embarrassed or regretful. She did not know, and she did not let it affect her. She was focused on getting the check properly processed this time. Ms. Grant handed the check back to Colin with clear instructions. "Please process this immediately and ensure it is handled with care," she said firmly. Colin nodded again and took the check to the counter. Mara watched as he carefully typed the information into the system. She noticed that he did not laugh, did not smirk, and did not show the casual attitude from yesterday. Within moments, Ms. Grant confirmed that the check had been successfully processed. Mara felt a sense of relief wash over her. She thanked Ms. Grant sincerely. Appreciating her kindness and professionalism, Ms. Grant smiled. "I am glad this could be resolved. I apologize again for the way you were treated yesterday. It was unacceptable." As Mara left the bank, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and accomplishment. The situation had been stressful, but she had handled it calmly and with dignity. She knew that the check would provide for Noel and that she had also shown him the importance of patience and persistence. As she stepped outside, the sunlight reflected off the glass windows, catching her attention again. Mara noticed the poster she had glimpsed yesterday. This time, she could see it clearly. It featured a smiling young boy in a bright yellow shirt, his face full of joy. Mara's heart skipped a beat. She recognized him immediately. It was Noel. She stopped in her tracks and stared at the poster. Her mind raced. The same bank that had treated her with disrespect yesterday was now proudly displaying her son's image in a major advertisement. The contrast was shocking, and Mara felt a swirl of emotions: pride, confusion, and a quiet anger. She realized that the bank was using her child's face to represent trust, community, and positivity while ignoring her as a customer of the day. Before Mara took a deep breath and reminded herself to stay calm. She could not let anger cloud her thinking. This discovery added a new layer to the situation, one that she would need to address later. For now, she focused on walking home, carrying the successfully processed check and thinking about the groceries and small treats she could finally bring to Noelle. As she walked, she noticed neighbors tending their gardens and children playing in the yard. The town seemed peaceful, but Mara's mind was busy, planning her next steps. She would need to contact the program director to explain the incident, and she would need to address the bank again regarding the disrespect she had received. Still, despite the tension and frustration, Mara felt a sense of quiet strength. She had handled a difficult situation with patience, maintained her dignity, and ensured her responsibilities were met. The incident at the bank had tested her, but it had not defeated her. She would continue to move forward, focused on her son, her work, and her life. Mara approached her home, the check safe in her purse, and felt a small smile form on her face. She thought about Noelle's excitement when she would tell him about the new treat she could buy him. That thought made her heart warm and reminded her why she worked so hard every day. The day was just beginning, and Mara knew that challenges would continue to come. But she also knew that she had the courage, determination, and patience to face them. The bank incident, while frustrating and unfair, had shown her resilience. She had stayed calm, stood up for herself, and ensured her son would be cared for. That was a victory she would carry with her. Mara entered her home and was greeted by Noelle's bright smile and cheerful voice. She felt the weight of the morning lift slightly, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and love. She placed the check on the kitchen table and hugged her son tightly, grateful for the small but meaningful victories in life. Mara could not stop looking at the poster in the bank window. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the familiar face of her son, Noelle, smiling brightly for the advertisement. He was wearing a yellow shirt, standing in a small playground, surrounded by other children, with his tiny hands raised as if waving to everyone passing by. The words on the poster read "Building Trust for Tomorrow," and above the words, the bank's logo gleamed in bright colors. For a moment, Mara froze in disbelief. Just yesterday, a teller had ripped up her check, laughing as if her time, effort, and livelihood did not matter. And now, the same bank proudly displayed her son as a symbol of community and trust. The irony was sharp, almost painful. She felt a mixture of pride, shock, and a quiet anger. How could an institution treat her with such disregard while using her child's face to show support and positivity? Mara stepped closer to the window, holding her check tightly in her hand. She wanted to press her forehead against the glass, to make the image of Noelle bigger and clearer. She examined every detail, the curve of his smile, the sparkle in his eyes, the energy he radiated. That boy was the reason she worked hard every day, the reason she tolerated struggles and kept moving forward despite challenges. Seeing him there made her chest swell with pride, but also with determination. She knew she could not let the injustice of the teller go unaddressed. Her mind wandered to the day the photograph had been taken. The community program had organized a small event for children, with games, painting, and storytelling. The bank had sponsored it, providing refreshments and supplies. Noelle had been selected to represent the children for a small photo shoot. Mara remembered how excited he had been that day, running around, waving at the photographer, and giggling as he posed for pictures. She had taken extra care to make sure he wore his favorite yellow shirt, which made him look cheerful and bright. The image on the poster captured all of that joy perfectly. Mara felt a strange warmth as she recalled the laughter of the children, the music playing softly in the background, and the sense of togetherness she had felt. That memory reminded her of the importance of her work and the impact it had on the community. Even though a small obstacle like the torn check had shaken her, it could not erase the good she had done or the joy her son had brought to others. Mara's thoughts returned to the bank. She realized that this was more than a personal incident. It was an opportunity to teach respect and fairness. The teller's behavior had been unacceptable, and the bank needed to recognize the value of every customer. especially one whose child was now a face representing their community efforts. She decided she would address the situation calmly, but with clear conviction. She took a deep breath and glanced down at her check. She could not afford to lose the payment for her work. It was necessary for groceries, supplies, and little joys for Noelle. The torn check yesterday had made her feel powerless, but seeing her son on the poster reminded her that she had a voice. She could speak for herself and for the dignity of her family. Mara returned home, keeping the image of Noelle on the poster in her mind. She explained to him gently about her plans to visit the bank again, but she did not mention the torn check in detail. Noelle nodded, trusting his mother to handle everything. His confidence gave her strength. She promised herself she would handle the situation with patience and clarity, making sure the bank understood the importance of respect, honesty, and proper treatment for all customers. At home, Mara prepared a small notebook. She wrote down the details of what had happened, the date, the teller's name, and her interactions. She also noted the exact program and the source of the check. This record would be useful when explaining the situation to the branch manager or the program director. By organizing the information, she felt more prepared, more confident, and more in control of the outcome. That afternoon, Mara and Noelle spent time together in the garden. She watched him run around, collecting small flowers and arranging them carefully in a tiny jar. He laughed freely, not aware of the tension his mother felt, and Mara felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was her motivation, her reason to keep going, and her inspiration to maintain dignity even in frustrating situations. Later, Mara decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, reflecting on the events. The streets were quiet, with neighbors tending gardens and children playing safely in yards. She observed people helping one another, sharing small acts of kindness, and realized that the community itself depended on respect and understanding. That thought strengthened her resolve. She would approach the bank with fairness, but she would insist on respect and proper handling. Mara also began to consider the positive side of seeing Noelle on the poster. It was a recognition of his joy, his energy, and the spirit of the children she worked with. The bank, intentionally or not, had highlighted the importance of children in the community, and Noelle represented that perfectly. She felt proud, knowing that his smile could inspire others, just as he inspired her every day. That evening, Mara wrote a letter to the program director. She explained the situation calmly and clearly, highlighting the torn check and her plans to address it with the bank. She also mentioned the poster and how her son was featured. She asked for guidance on how to handle the situation professionally, and she thanked the director for the support the program always provided. Sending the letter made her feel more confident and prepared. As night fell, Mara looked at Noelle sleeping peacefully in his small bed. She kissed his forehead softly, feeling gratitude for the small joys in life, despite the challenges. She realized that respect, dignity, and love were the most important things she could give her son, and no small obstacle could take that away. The memory of the poster stayed in her mind as she drifted to sleep. She knew that tomorrow she would approach the bank with calm authority and ensure that the mistake from yesterday was corrected. She also knew that she had seen something important: the power of her child's smile, the impact of small gestures, and the responsibility of institutions to respect the people they serve. Mara understood that the coming day would be challenging, but she felt ready. The image of Noelle on the poster reminded her that even small victories mattered, and that perseverance, patience, and dignity would always carry her forward. She fell asleep with a sense of purpose, knowing she had a plan, knowing she had the courage to act, and knowing that her son's happiness and integrity were her guiding lights. The next morning, Mara woke with a sense of purpose. The memory of the torn check and the image of Noelle on the bank poster weighed on her mind. She had decided that she would not leave the situation unresolved. Today, she would go to the bank and speak with the branch manager directly. She carefully prepared herself, dressing neatly in a simple white blouse and dark skirt. She combed her hair back into a tidy ponytail and took a deep breath. Confidence and calm would be her allies. Before leaving, She packed the check, her notebook with all the details of the incident, and a small list of questions she wanted to ask. She wanted to be precise, organized, and polite, making sure the situation was resolved without unnecessary conflict. She also wanted to understand how the teller had acted so carelessly, and ensure that no one else would experience the same disrespect. Noelle noticed her careful preparations and asked softly, "Mama, are you going to the bank again?" Mara smiled, gently, crouching down to his level. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to speak to the manager. Everything will be fine." He nodded, trusting her completely. "Be careful," he said, giving her a small hug. Mara felt her resolve strengthen. She would act responsibly and firmly, and she would show Noelle the importance of handling challenges with patience and dignity. Mara walked to the bank, the morning sun warming her back. The streets were quiet, with neighbors watering gardens and a few early customers walking past the shops. She took slow, steady steps, keeping her mind focused on the plan she had made. She reminded herself to stay calm and to speak clearly, presenting the facts without anger. When she entered the bank, the familiar cool air welcomed her. A few customers were already at the counters, but her attention went directly to the office, where the branch manager worked. She approached the receptionist and introduced herself politely. "Good morning. My name is Mara. I would like to speak with Ms. Grant, the branch manager, regarding an issue from yesterday." The receptionist nodded and picked up the phone. "Please wait a moment," she said. Within a few minutes, Mara was invited into the manager's office. The room was bright and welcoming, with a large window letting in sunlight and a few potted plants on the shelves. Ms. Grant stood as Mara entered, offering a warm smile. "Good morning, Mara," Ms. Grant said. "Please have a seat. How can I help you today?" Mara took a deep breath and began. "Thank you for seeing me yesterday. I came to deposit a check from the local community program." The teller, Colin, tore the check in half and laughed at me. He refused to process it, even though it was valid and from a program that uses your bank regularly. Ms. Grant listened carefully, nodding. Her expression was attentive and serious. Mara continued, showing the torn check and explaining every detail. She remembered the date, the amount, and her conversation with Colin. She also mentioned that she had brought her notebook with notes about the incident. "I understand," Ms. Grant said once Mara finished explaining. "This should not have happened. Our bank has a policy to always honor checks from our sponsored programs. I am very sorry you were treated this way." Mara felt a small wave of relief, but she kept her focus. "Thank you, Ms. Grant. I also noticed something else. Yesterday, as I was leaving, I saw a poster inside the bank. My son, Noelle, was featured on it. It is a wonderful photograph, but it also shows how the bank values him while disregarding me as a customer. I want to ensure that all customers are treated with respect, not just represented in images." Ms. Grant's expression changed from concern to understanding. She gestured toward a chair. "Please sit for a moment. I want to make sure we handle this correctly." Mara sat calmly, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. Ms. Grant picked up the phone and called Colin into the office. A few moments later, the teller entered, his expression nervous and unsure. He avoided Mara's eyes, clearly realizing that the situation was more serious than he had expected. "Colin," Ms. Grant began, "this customer, Mara, had a valid check yesterday. She was treated unfairly, and this should never have happened. I also want to discuss your behavior and ensure it does not happen again." Colin swallowed and nodded. I understand," he said quietly. "I did not check the system properly. I see now that I made a mistake." Mara stayed calm, her expression steady. "I appreciate your acknowledgement," she said. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I want to make sure that respect and fairness are shown to all customers, and that valid checks are always processed correctly." Ms. Grant nodded. "You are absolutely right, Colin. You need to follow proper procedures at all times. This includes verifying information and treating every customer with courtesy and professionalism." "Do you understand?" Colin nodded again. "Yes, Ms. Grant, I understand completely." Ms. Grant turned to Mara. "I will ensure your check is properly reissued today. You will receive an official apology from the bank as well. I will also make sure the staff is reminded of the importance of respect and proper procedure. Your experience is not acceptable, and we are committed to correcting it." Mara felt a sense of relief and satisfaction. She had approached the situation calmly and professionally, and it had been taken seriously. She could now focus on her son, her work, and the lesson she wanted to teach him about standing up for oneself with patience and dignity. Ms. Grant then looked at Mara and said gently, "I also want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. Your actions help us improve and serve our community better. The photograph of your son will remain on the poster, but we will make sure it is used responsibly and respectfully with your knowledge and consent." Mara smiled. "Thank you, Ms. Grant. I am happy to know that the bank values children and families in the community. That is why it is important to treat every customer with fairness." As Mara left the manager's office, she felt lighter and more confident. The check would be processed correctly, the bank would address the behavior of the teller, and she had shown Noelle the importance of calm perseverance. Walking through the bank, she noticed the poster with her son's image again. This time, it did not feel ironic or painful. Instead, it reminded her of the positive impact of her work and the joy that Noelle brought to everyone around him. Mara stepped outside into the warm morning sunlight. She held her head high, feeling a quiet pride in her ability to handle a difficult situation with patience and clarity. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she had the courage, wisdom, and determination to face them. After leaving the branch manager's office, Mara felt a quiet satisfaction. The torn check had been addressed, and the bank had acknowledged her concerns. She knew that she had handled the situation with patience and dignity, and that sense of accomplishment gave her a warm glow. But Mara also felt a responsibility toward the teller. He had made a mistake, and while she had addressed the incident professionally, she wondered if he truly understood the impact of his actions. Remained in the office, summoned by Ms. Grant to discuss the matter further. His hands fidgeted nervously as he reviewed the events in his mind. He could still remember the way Mara had approached the counter, the calm but firm way she had explained her situation, and the unwavering dignity in her eyes. For the first time, he felt a sense of guilt that went beyond professional reprimand. Ms. Grant spoke clearly. This is a learning opportunity. You must understand that every customer is important. You cannot treat anyone with disregard, regardless of their background or the amount of money involved. Do you understand the seriousness of this situation? Nodded, his voice quiet. "Yes, Ms. Grant, I understand. I realize I treated the customer unfairly. I did not check the system and acted carelessly. I am truly sorry." Ms. Grant studied him carefully. "I want more than words. I want you to understand how your actions affect real people. This is why Mara brought her son's photograph to your attention. Children, families, and the community are watching, and the way you behave reflects on the entire branch. You need to remember this moving forward." Swallowed hard. He thought about Mara, holding her check, standing calmly despite his careless actions. He remembered her polite tone, her quiet strength, and the way she had insisted on fairness. Without raising her voice, it made him feel small, yet it also inspired a desire to improve. He realized that respect was not just a rule, it was the foundation of trust between the bank and its customers. "I understand," said again, more firmly this time. "I will do better. I will treat every customer with respect and ensure that every check is handled correctly. I will not forget this lesson." Ms. Grant nodded approvingly. "Good. I will assign you additional training to reinforce these values. Remember, mistakes are opportunities to grow, but repeated carelessness is unacceptable. You are responsible for your actions and their impact on others." Felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. He realized that the training and guidance were not punishments, but tools to help him become better at his job and more aware of the people he served. For the first time in his career, he felt a deep understanding of what it meant to be responsible and considerate. Meanwhile, Mara returned home, her mind still buzzing with thoughts about the incident. She prepared a small snack for Noel and watched him eat happily, his laughter filling the kitchen. She felt a sense of relief that the situation was resolved, but also a lingering desire to ensure that such disrespect would not happen again. For her sake and for the sake of others who might encounter similar treatment. Later that afternoon, Mara received a phone call from Ms. Grant. "Mara, I want to update you," the manager said warmly. "Colin has acknowledged his mistake and is beginning the additional training we discussed. We have also issued an official apology for the incident. Your check has been processed and deposited successfully. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. It helps us serve the community better." Mara smiled and thanked Ms. Grant sincerely. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that her actions had not only resolved her own problem, but also encouraged positive change. Within the bank, she realized that standing up calmly and clearly for what was right could have a wider impact than she had first imagined. As evening approached, Mara decided to take Noel to the park. She wanted him to enjoy the warm light of the setting sun and to see how his small joys could inspire others. They walked hand in hand, laughing and playing with a few other children. Mara watched Noel run freely, feeling proud of the young boy who had been photographed for the bank poster. She thought about how his smile had touched the hearts of others, and how she had used patience and calmness to ensure fairness for both her and her son. At the bank the next morning, Colin approached his counter with a new mindset. He greeted each customer politely, took the time to verify every transaction carefully, and treated everyone with respect. The memory of Mara's calm and dignity stayed with him, reminding him of the human impact of his work. He realized that every action, no matter how small, could either build trust or break it. He glanced at the poster of Noel on the wall and felt a deep sense of responsibility. That bright smile was more than just a photograph, it was a symbol of the community the bank served. Colin understood that he had a role in honoring that trust, and he was determined not to fail again. Mara, meanwhile, continued her work at the community program. She organized events, encouraged children to explore their creativity, and build connections with families in the neighborhood. The check she had finally received provided for her household, but the real reward was the knowledge that her calm persistence had made a difference, both for her family and for the way the bank approached its customers. She shared the lesson with Noel in her own gentle way. "Noel," she said one evening, "sometimes people make mistakes or act unfairly, but if we stay calm, speak clearly, and do what is right, we can make things better. That is more powerful than anger." Noel nodded, his eyes bright with understanding. "I will remember, Mama," he said. "I will always try to be calm and fair too." Mara hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of the bond they shared. She realized that the experience had been challenging, but it had strengthened her resolve, her understanding, and her connection to her son. She had turned a moment of frustration into a lesson about dignity, patience, and courage. As the days passed, the bank staff became more attentive, and Colin's attitude changed noticeably. He approached each customer with respect, double-checked transactions, and reminded himself that fairness and kindness were essential in every interaction. He even smiled genuinely at customers, inspired by Mara's example of calm confidence and her insistence on being treated properly. Mara, reflecting on the experience, understood that sometimes change comes slowly, through small but meaningful actions. Her calm and steady approach had not only solved her own problem, but had encouraged growth and awareness in others. She felt proud of the example she had set, not only for her son, but for everyone who observed her actions. The days after the incident at the bank passed peacefully. Mara noticed a change not only in the teller, Colin, but also in the atmosphere of the branch. Customers were treated more attentively, staff greeted them with genuine smiles, and there was a sense of professionalism that had been missing before. Mara felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her calm persistence had made a real difference. At home, life returned to its steady rhythm. Noel continued to explore his creativity with drawing, painting, and small projects around the house. Mara watched him closely, marveling at how his small joys could bring warmth and happiness into their lives. She often thought about the poster at the bank and how it had symbolized the importance of children in the community. Seeing Noelle's face smiling on that poster had reminded her of the value of patience, dignity, and standing up for what is right. One morning, Mara received a phone call from Ms. Grant, the branch manager. "Good morning, Mara," she said warmly. "I just wanted to update you. Colin has completed his additional training, and he has shown significant improvement. He now understands the importance of respect, patience, and careful attention in every interaction. Thank you for helping us create a better environment for everyone." Mara smiled and thanked Ms. Grant. "I am glad to hear that. It is important that everyone is treated fairly, and I am happy that the situation has helped improve things." Noelle, who had been sitting nearby, looked up curiously. "Mama, did you help make the bank better?" he asked with wide eyes. Mara nodded and hugged him gently. "Yes, my little one. We both helped in a way." Your smile reminded everyone how important it is to be kind and fair. The next few weeks passed quickly. Mara continued her work with the community program, organizing events and helping children explore their creativity. She realized that the bank incident had taught her more than just patience. It had taught her about advocacy, self-respect, and the importance of speaking up when something is wrong. She had faced an unfair situation calmly and professionally, and the outcome had been positive for herself, her son, and the community. One afternoon, Mara decided to visit the bank again, not out of necessity, but to see the changes for herself. She walked in and was greeted warmly by the staff. Colin, now more composed and respectful, greeted her politely, his tone sincere. "Good afternoon, Mara. How are you today?" Mara smiled. "I'm well, thank you. I wanted to see how things are going." Colin nodded. "Everything is going smoothly. I'm making sure every customer is treated with respect, and I am double-checking all transactions. I learned a lot from our previous interaction, and I am grateful for the lesson." Mara felt a sense of satisfaction. She had approached the situation with patience and calm, and the result had been meaningful growth and improvement. She could see that her actions had inspired change, and that thought filled her with pride. After leaving the bank, Mara walked through the town, noticing the little things she sometimes overlooked. Children laughing in the park, neighbors helping each other with groceries, and the soft warmth of the sun on her face reminded her of the importance of community. She thought about how small acts of fairness and patience could ripple outward, touching many lives. At home, she shared the story with Noelle in a way he could understand. "Noelle, sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes they are unfair," she said gently. "But if we stay calm, speak clearly, and do what is right, we can help make things better." That is what we did together. Noelle's eyes sparkled with understanding. "I will remember, Mama. I want to be fair and kind too." Mara hugged him tightly, feeling grateful for the small but meaningful victories in life. The experience also changed Mara's perspective on her work. She realized that every effort, no matter how small, had value. Helping children explore their creativity, organizing events, and advocating for fairness were all important. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her actions could inspire others and bring positive change to the community. One afternoon, as Mara and Noelle walked to the local park, they noticed a group of children from the community program laughing and playing together. Mara smiled, watching them interact, imagining how many little lessons of kindness, patience, and fairness they were learning from everyday experiences. She realized that the poster at the bank had become more than an image. It was a reminder of the power of small joys and the responsibility of adults to guide and protect those joys. Mara also thought about the future. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she felt prepared. The bank incident had shown her that patience, dignity, and clear communication could create meaningful change. She had seen firsthand how one calm and confident action could influence others, encourage growth, and inspire respect. That evening, Mara and Noelle sat together, drawing pictures of their day. Noel laughed as he colored the sun bright yellow and drew small flowers around the park. Mara joined him, sketching small trees and children playing. They shared ideas and stories, their bond stronger than ever. Mara realized that these moments of shared joy were the true treasures of life. As the sun set, casting a warm glow across the room, Mara reflected on all that had happened. The torn check, the laughter of the teller, the poster with Noel's image. Each moment had taught her something important. She had learned to remain calm under pressure, to stand up for fairness, and to recognize the value of her own actions. She had taught Noel lessons that would guide him as he grew, showing him that dignity, patience, and courage were far more powerful than anger or frustration. Mara felt a deep sense of peace as she looked at her son, imagining the future filled with small victories, kindness, and shared joy. She knew that challenges would come, but she also knew that she had the strength and wisdom to face them. Her life, though filled with responsibilities, was rich with purpose and love. The next morning, Mara woke early, feeling energized and ready for the day. She prepared breakfast for Noel and watched him eat happily, humming a tune he had made up himself. She smiled, knowing that together they had faced obstacles, learned valuable lessons, and created a life built on trust, patience, and care. Mara stepped outside, feeling the warmth of the sun and the gentle breeze on her face. She realized that the events at the bank had been more than a challenge, they had been a turning point. She had faced unfairness with dignity, taught important lessons to her son, and inspired growth in others. Life, she understood, was full of opportunities to act with integrity, and she was determined to continue embracing them. As she walked down the quiet street, hand in hand with Noel, Mara felt a sense of calm confidence. She knew that no matter what came next, she and her son would face it together, guided by patience, respect, and the quiet strength of knowing that doing what is right always matters.